Hi, everybody. I am here. Send me a chat if you can see and hear me. That would be fantastic. I have my guest, Julia Claiborne Johnson, sitting just off screen. She can hear me, but we can't hear her yet. So don't panic. She is here. I panicked her by messing with her technology just before the show. So I'm giving her a moment to take a breath. Um, Couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Oh, Karen is here and Lori Nix is here. Hi, Renee is here. Yay, fantastic. And Kelly is here. She can hear me. She knows that is always my concern at the beginning. Oh, Catherine Denise is here. Wonderful to see you. Okay, couple of housekeeping items real quickly before we get started. So self promotion alert. I am out with a new Audible original this week. It's called Meditations with Mia Blue, and of course, it dropped right after the insurrection. So we we love the timing of all these events, don't we? Anyway, if you are an Audible member, it is free to you, and it's like a 2 hour vacation. It's a novella. It's really short, but I meant it to be funny. And this one actually takes place in California, where I used to live. So it's very, very fun. It's about a social media celebrity influencer whose life is not as nearly as perfect have as she would have you believe. Now, if you are not a Audible member, um, I am running a raffle for some free download codes, and you can find that on my website, which is gretchenanthony.com. So go and check it out. If you are a member, it's already there. You can already listen. And if you're not a member, sign up for the raffle, and I may just be able to send you a free code. Okay, so there's that one. And then coming up for our next book, January 26th, is The Big Finish by Brooke Fossey. Um, and I'm really looking forward to this one. It's basically about, as I understand it, and I got to admit, I haven't started it yet. It is about a couple of people who attempt an escape from the old folks' home. I may be wrong, but it gets like 2 thumbs up from J. Ryan Straddle, who you know I trust immensely. So we are going forward. And Brooke is a delight. We've been chatting a little bit behind the scenes in order to get started, or in order to, get her lined up. And she will be appearing on the 26th to discuss her book. So that is fantastic. Make sure you show up. Okay. I positioned my camera right in front of all your comments. So, oh, thank you. Thank you, Karen. She says, she says that I think you're talking about Mia Blue, but maybe she's talking about The Big Finish. That is really, really funny. So one of them is really funny, and I hope that you check it out. Both of them, Big Finish and Mia Blue. Okay, now for the big event. Everybody is here because they cannot wait to meet our next guest. Those of you who have been with the book club for a while may remember that our guest joined us by surprise, though not necessarily in person, when we read her best-selling book, Be Frank with Me, last spring. She was nice enough. I think it was Renee Rosen who gave her a heads up that we were discussing her book. She popped onto the chat and answered all kinds of questions. And of course, I immediately fell in love with her just from that generous effort, author to author. So with no further ado, meet Julia Johnson.
Here I am, as I live and breathe. I have clothes on and everything. So
we had a back and forth going on Twitter today about who was going to be more dressed up, because I said I had blow dried my hair, which is unusual, and Julia.
Wait, here we go. I have a shirt on. I just want everybody to know, because when it's like this, it looks like I'm naked, but it's just a plunging neckline. Where's my hair? I'm all backwards here. So anyway, here I am in all my glory.
Oh, you've got tons of, I don't know if you can see the comments or if you figured out where to look for them, but you've got tons of hellos coming in. Everybody is so excited to
Hey,
kick off this book with you. Um,
was I still writing this book when we talked last time? Do you remember?
you had just finished it. You had
Ah,
just finished it because it wasn't long after that you were nice enough to send me an advance copy.
okay, good. Yeah, because that was like the hardest thing to write that's ever been written in the face of the world. Just,
That's what I wanted to ask you about. So I want to give you, here's what we're going to do, everybody. This is not going to be our standard. This is a between the laughs. And Julia was generous enough to set this up with us. So I'm going to ask her to set the book up today. And then we're going to tell us all about it. And then we're going to do our raffle, or I'll take some questions and then we're going to do our raffle and then say goodnight. So Julia, I'm going to kick this off and give you kind of a choice of questions.
okay.
You have said that before, that it was a really difficult book to write.
Yes.
So tell us about that, or what inspired it, or what does one lead to the other? What was so hard?
Okay, here's what happened. In real life, my father, during the Depression, worked as a fake cowboy at a divorce ranch outside of Reno. He was born in 1916, so he'd be 104 if he were still alive. So
This is your father.
this is my father. He was, I was the product of his second marriage. So I'm very glad that divorce is a thing that was available, because he had a first wife, and his first wife was fantastically wealthy. So I assume he met her there, because he grew up on a dairy farm in West Tennessee, and I don't know where else he would have met a fantastically wealthy woman. But these ladies would go there because you could get a quickie divorce. You had to be a Nevada resident for 6 weeks, and then you were a citizen, and then they could set you free. So these rich ladies, I mean, people of all walks of life would go, but for the dude ranches that were divorce ranches, like what you saw in The Women, if you've ever seen The Women, that black and white movie, they go to one. That was not cheap. It was very fancy, but it was like, dude ranch fancy. So, I just, when he was alive, I didn't think it was particularly interesting. But then when you grow up and you realize, oh, everybody's father did not do this. And and then he was gone. Like there was no way for me to ask him questions. So I thought, well, that's kind of a fun idea for a book, because he was very handsome. That was like the thing you needed to be, was very handsome, and he used to dance with the ladies, play cards with them, listen to them, drive them around. That was his do farm. Those were his duties. And then once I went to do research about it, I was like, oh, now I really understand what was going on. So hence the book. And it just seems so silly because, like through the years, the generations, women are used to being valued for their looks, but it was kind of a new thing for our character, who was like a Yale University pre-med student, lost all his money in the Depression, and he gets this job, and suddenly he's eye candy. So
He's eye candy.
And he likes it, but he's also kind of insulted by it. So,
yeah, right.
Anyway, so that's how I came to write it. And then the reason it was so hard to write was the first book I wrote was in first person, be frank with me.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I'll write this one in third person. And I turned it in, and my editor said, I wrote half of it and turned it in. And she said, I don't know, Julia, I mean, you're all voice and throwaway jokes. I don't think this is really serving you well, third person. So I was like, all right. So I started all over again, and I wrote half of it, and I turned that version in. And this went on for years. I turned that version in, and she said, well, I love the prologue. I hate the rest of it. And I don't remember what the rest of it was. So the rest of it was terrible, I'm sure. But at least this time I had 6 pages, and then I started all over again, and that time it worked. So that may have been a long answer to a short question.
No, everybody loves this kind of insight. Kelly's asking, so writing about your dad as eye candy would be a bit odd.
Well, that's right. It's nice that it's completely made up, because I don't know if you've told people this, but it's like Barnes and Noble is this store. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. They have
tell everybody, this is fantastic news.
I know, exactly. Let me tell you about it. They're like the small store. Anyway, my book is the National Book Club pick, like in our whole nation for Barnes and Noble. I had to write. First of all, I had to keep that secret for months, which almost made me explode. But
So
I had to
now,
write.
is this different than like, is it the book club pick for 1 month, or is it like for the year?
No, they pick one a month. So like
Okay,
last year, they picked
so
11.
fantastic.
I
Yeah.
know, and like all the books they picked last year, I was like, oh my God, I read that book. That book was so good. Somehow someone has hornswoggled this person into thinking that my book is on the same level as these other, like The Pull of the Stars. Have you read that book? I loved that book. It's Emma Donahue. It came out last summer.
Say
Leave the
say
World
the
Behind.
title again. I missed it.
Yeah, no, they're really excellent books. So, but you have to write special, special section. They have a special edition that has more stuff in it. And one of them has pictures of my father in his eye candy days and my mother, because my mother was a doctor. And so the narrator in the book is a doctor because that was what I knew about. So they're both inspirations for it. And there's a picture of me as a sullen teenager because there's a sullen teenage character in there. And so that's fun that there's like this extra stuff in there. But
Did
yeah,
you
what a
start this book as a bit of an exploration to get to know a little bit more about your father?
Well, I totally, because when I went to the, because I never really understood what he did at that period until I went to do the research, and then it made sense. It kind of never made sense to me because he only told a couple of stories about it, which makes me wonder if the experience was a little wounding for him that he was, because he had that first rich wife who then kicked him to the curb. I mean, I don't know who broke up with who. He didn't talk to me about all his marriages nearly as much as you would think. you know, so I kind of don't know the particulars, but he only had like a couple of set stories he told about it, but then he didn't talk about it at all aside from that. And one of the set stories was that like he was from West Tennessee, and Reno, I don't know if you know this, it's in Nevada. And so one of the
I do know
I
that.
know, really, like let me teach you a few things here tonight. But one of the rich ladies there gave him a car, and this was in the Depression. And not many people had cars, so he was so excited. So he drove the car home to Brownsville, Tennessee, and his mother was horrified. And she said, "We are not the kind of people who take automobiles from rich old ladies." So she made him turn around and take it back. So that was one of the stories. I can't think what the other one was, but anyway, it was just one part of his material, and then he never explored it aside from that. So then I got to. And it's not what his experience was like, but to sort of imagine what it might have been like for him. And, that was really kind of neat. I liked that. And when I went to the Reno Historical Society to do research, everybody who worked there was so excited, and they were like, they scattered in every direction, and they were trying to help me find where he'd been. And, who knows? He might have been there a month. He could have been there 3 years. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
And they couldn't really find any clue of where he might have been, but then that was nice too, because then I could make the whole thing up. I mean, with the reality of the situation was not made up, but the particulars, the name of the ranch, what it looked like, what the rules were, because there had to be a rule that you couldn't sleep with or be overly friendly with the clientele, and that may have been a rule, but I made it up because I needed it for the story to work. So I could make that, it was really set me free. So that was kind of great. And my mother, and I grew up on a horse farm. So I knew a lot about horses. And my mother was a doctor. So I basically took everything I knew and put it in Reno. And the farm is kind of the farm I grew up on, except it's in Reno.
Except it's in Reno.
What else are you going to do? So
That's fantastic. Plus, I think that period in Nevada,
mm-hmm.
Nevada was fascinating. I mean, now we know it only as Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
but Nevada was fascinating for decades because it was so isolated and it's rough. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom lived there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, throughout or at the end of high school and throughout college. She went to college in Minnesota, which is where she met my dad. That's a whole long story. But she'll sit down and I don't know, was your dad the same way? You have to ask a probing question in order to get more than like a rote answer,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to like carve out some time.
Mm-hmm. I should
But
have done. But he was so much older. But the thing that was interesting about Nevada, and how they got into the quickie divorce game is that like there was like the silver rush, like the silver miners, and there were
Mhm.
so many men there, and there were not a lot of women, and so they're like, okay, this is not working out with him, but there's some other guys who need a wife, so we'll let you get divorced really quick. So and there was, and I talk about her in the book. There was a mining heiress, and she was illiterate, but she had run this boarding house and gotten mining things, and she had 3 husbands in the course of her life, and she was, for a long time, she was the richest woman in the United States, not just Nevada. Couldn't read a lick. She had the biggest library in the state. And it's just fascinating to me. And then she died penniless. So,
Did her mind quit
well,
giving up?
she squandered all her money. She like built a house. She'd grown up in Scotland. And so she like made this house like the rich people in Scotland had. And she would go to Europe and France. They're both in the same place. I don't know if you know that. But not all parts, just some parts. So, and buy expensive antiques. So she had all this like way over the top lifestyle, and then she couldn't sustain it. And her 3rd husband died, and I think he was the brains of the business thing. Like I think the first husband, I don't think he had much to do with anything. I think the first mining things came from her second husband, and then the 3rd guy might have been the brains, and he died suddenly, and all her children died as children. Oh, it's just like such a tale of woe. So, but the whole life
You sound like you had a kick researching this.
Oh, it was the best. It was so much fun. And the other hilarious thing, Gretchen, is like there was the place the title comes from is there was a divorce judge called George Barrett. I think George was probably his first name, but Judge Barrett, when he divorced people, he would gavel and go, "You're now free. Better luck next time." So that's where the title came from. So I'm telling my cousin Denise in Como, Mississippi, this story, and she goes, "Wait a minute. Judge Barrett's grandson is one of my best friends."
No,
Crazy.
that is
So, I
fantastic.
sent him a copy of the book and I said, Mike, listen, your grandfather, God bless him, because I read his memoir. I used his thing for a title of the book, and then he had a really good joke in there because it was like story after story about divorce things. And so I like used one of his jokes, and in the acknowledgments of the book, I said, I totally lifted your joke. It's yours. Thank you. So, but it was great. It was so fun to read all that stuff, and how like the way Reno was keeping itself together during the Depression is like we can have the divorce industry, we can have gambling, all these things that'll bring tourists here at a time where not a lot of people have a lot of money, and it did, but it also didn't like it wasn't like a good long-term strategy because it made it get kind of seedy. So
Yeah.
anyway.
But what an attitude that endures today in Nevada. Better luck next time. Your luck was bad today.
And there were people who would get married. There was a guy, and I should have looked up his name again. They made a movie about him starring Gary Cooper, and he had 11 wives because he would just he'd have one for a day, get rid of her. Maybe he'd have the next one for like 6 months and just would cycle through them. And that's a whole thing in the book too about how like there's some people get on the treadmill and they just start to cycle through it. And the other people are just really trying to find the person who's right for them. So
Yeah. I love this. So, I don't know if this is William or Sandra asking them questions, but they want to know
I can see it on the thing. I don't know. I could never find what dude ranch he worked on. So that's why I made one up. And I had to like figure out like where it needed to be. I don't have them up anymore. I had maps of Reno, and I would like stare at them and go, okay, it needs to be right here. And that was what I did to do it. But who knows? There was just because he may have only been there a month,
Yeah.
But he must have been there at least a good 6 months if he got a car out of an old lady. I mean, that takes some research and development. So.
Okay, people. We're going to try and wrap up within a half an hour here because we are asking Julia back in May, and I'm so excited. But I do have a question. So everybody, if you have specific questions for Julia, type them in now, and we'll get to them before we move on. But also, I do have a question. Since we will be reconvening after everyone has read the book, is there anything that you hope readers will take from the book, or anything you want the group to look for?
Yes, I have something. Well, one fun thing is like I'm bad at naming characters, and so I was struggling to come up with characters, and I was like, and I had read a bunch of books set in the 30s and by people, who wrote them in the 30s and about the 30s and all the stuff, and a lot of them were talking about novelists who named various of their characters after friends of theirs, and I was like, oh, that's such a good idea because I had my first novel, the woman. There are two things. She can't think of names for characters, and she has a hard time writing a second novel. Why did I write that? So okay, I'm going to do that because who do I know that has a bunch of, who would be excited to have a character named after them? And then I thought, oh my God, booksellers, because I made a lot of bookseller friends from Frank. And the first one was somebody who worked in a Chicago bookstore called The Bookseller, and her name is Portia Turner. So I was like, Portia is the first one because Portia helped me move my son into college. When he went to college in Chicago, she borrowed a car and it was crazy. And so I was like, okay, Portia's number one on my list. And so I was thinking about Portia. And then my son had been in A Midsummer Night's Dream in high school, and he played bottom, and he had this paper mache donkey head that was his costume, and I was obsessed by it. And I was like, and he was in The Midsummer Night's Dream, and I love that thing. I could maybe get the donkey's head into there. And then it just one thing, then the whole play is in there, and then one thing leads to another, and it goes from just being a throwaway to being a part of it. And the paper mache donkey's head, my editor was like, it went from being a sight gag to a plot device to a metaphor. And I was like, yes. And that it seemed like a miracle to me. Like it just was a random thing. Like if Portia had been named Betty, the whole thing would have been different, So it's fun to look for. And there's a lot of stuff that starts out like that where you suddenly realize, oh, this is a metaphor, and you don't get it till the end that it is. So you can look, keep a list. Tell me.
Okay. We all have our homework. Keep a list.
Yeah, exactly.
Of all the things that sort of transform over the course of the pages.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, you need to see this one. From Catherine. Your positive outlook, maybe, or you had 6 good pages. I'm going to share this with my little kiddos in our writing lessons. I think she meant outlook. Well,
yeah, but I'll tell you, I think that's when I was writing my first book, when I was trying to teach myself how to write a novel. I was like, I would read books and think, this is a terrible book. How did this book get published? And then one day I went, oh, wait a minute. I know how it got published. They finished it. And that I think is key. It's not how much talent you have. The talent is useless if you can't pick yourself up and brush yourself off and start again.
Yeah.
So that was a very valuable lesson to me because, if you don't do that, then all the work you've already done is for naught. If you can't just go, okay, we got to keep trying. We got to just keep going. And it was and I felt confident that it was in there somewhere. I mean, I'm sure sometimes you would try to write a book and you would go, oh, wait a minute, this is not going to work. But it just seems so fun. And just that it could be the women are in charge, kind of, the men are objectified, everything about that entertained me. And what's funny too? Gretchen, I was reading, some of my favorite books are True. Have you ever read True Grit?
Oh yeah, my dad. Oh my God.
Such a triumph of voice. That's one of my favorite books. And I love Remains of the Day. And I was sitting at my desk one day going, oh my God, I'm writing True Grit meets Remains of the Day. Because the cowboys are like the butlers. And they're also sort of shoveled aside. And I was like, except I'm not that brilliant, but it's going to still be great because I'm going to finish it. So.
Well, I have to say, you're inspiring. Your talent is inspiring. So.
And I was old as hell too. I mean, I started my first book when I was 50. And this one, I'm now 60. My mother, who is one of the inspirations, turned 92 on a week ago today, and I am 62 at this point. And here I am. Suddenly, I'm writing books.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, it's fantastic, and you do have a lot of talent. Okay, Kelly is saying the early scene. Oh, well, I'm just reading this for people like you read, PowerPoint slides. The Barn Cat and Kittens is still very vivid, not a question, just a compliment on creating.
No, thank you. And that's one of my favorite jokes is about how hard it is to milk a cat. It's hilarious.
Is that something you need to look for, all of us who haven't finished the book before May, this scene.
Oh yes, but we grew up on a farm, and we had 20 cats all the time. We had like 6 dogs, 20 cats. The cats and the dogs would have kittens and puppies at the same time, and they would cross nurse. Like the kittens would nurse from the cow, from the not the cows, the dogs. And I would, when you milk the cows, you would squirt it into their mouth, to the cat's mouth. And there used to be a scene. I don't think that's in there anymore, but like all that stuff is like, you've got my childhood right there. I know a lot about what kittens are like. So that's why I turned out okay. I was really into the kittens. And people are like, are you tired of the kittens yet? I was like, I will never be tired of the kittens. So.
Oh, although that's going to be fabulous, because that, just knowing that you grew up on a farm and that this is based quite a bit on your childhood is going to be so enlightening as people read the book.
Listen, my editor and I had this long, like for 2 weeks, argument about the fact that there's a horse in there who is 15, which is like late middle, like about my age as a human being. And 2 people ride him bareback at one point. She said, he's an old horse. Wouldn't that be too much for him? I'd be like, Kate, which of us grew up on a horse farm? But then I said, and finally I said, it's like you telling me I can't carry 2 suitcases. For the love of God, I know what I'm talking about. The horse is going to be fine with the 2 people riding bareback. That's why they left the saddle behind. Get rid of extra weight. So we would have these like crazy like things. And she's like a city girl. I'm like, honey, I know what I'm talking about. This is one part where
I trust you on everything else, but no.
yeah. Barnyard stuff, I got that down. So.
Okay, Kelly, just one more thing. There was a lot of librarian love for this book. It's always terrific to hear, isn't it?
Oh, that is so exciting. Yeah. So thank you. Because,
Yeah.
it's my childhood. I'm sure you did too, Gretchen. Like, weren't you in the library like all day Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
You read every book there?
Yeah. And I have this theory that I've stated many times and asked many librarians about, but I am convinced that library water out of the drinking fountains has, like, I'm convinced all of the libraries in the county where I grew up all got their water from the same place, because it all tasted great and it all tasted the same. And I'm sure it's really because I rode my bike there every time, and it was hot. And by the time I took a drink of water, it was, I was so thirsty. But no, I don't know. That is, yeah, every Saturday.
It's where the inspiration came from. Therein lies our genius. It came from the water fountains in the libraries. That's where we got it. See, I couldn't ride my bike into town because I lived on the old Nashville Dirt Road. That was the name of the road.
The old National Dirt Road.
It was not well paved enough to ride your bike into town on. So
that is fantastic. The old National Dirt Road. Okay, so dun, dun, look what I have.
Your special effects.
It's a little close to the camera. Okay. We're giving away 3 books today to 3 very lucky people, which also means you can join our conversation in May. You can join the Barnes and Noble conversation. Yeah. What's your month? Your Barnes and Noble month?
February. It's on Groundhog Day, so that's easy to remember. So you go to Facebook Live and they have a thing, and it was so funny because like once I knew, I would go to all of them and I'd be sitting there going, I just want to tell people that I'm coming up. Like it was killing me. Just let me tell somebody. Like, can I just stop?
That would be a hard one to keep.
It was a hard one to keep for real.
Okay, well, anytime you have something that you can't keep, you can tell me.
Okay, good. Good to know. Nice. And then you'll tell everybody.
Okay, here's the hat. Names inside. Okay, first one. I don't know if people can see this, Karen Munson, which is great. She is a book club regular. I'm really, really glad she won. Karen, you won a book. So Karen, everybody who wins a book tonight, I will reach out to you online to get your address, and then we'll ship you your book. Okay, number 2. Oh, you're gonna like this one.
I can't see it.
Joan Frank.
Who was it?
Joan Frank.
Oh, yes, she's my friend, Joan Frank. And you said Joanne. I was like, who's Joanne? Joan Frank and I were at a writer's retreat together, and we were next door neighbors, and we discovered that we could talk to each other through our medicine cabinets. Like if we both opened our medicine cabinet door, we could hear each other. And so we'd brush our teeth and chat. She's great. I'm glad you won one. Good.
Yes.
She is a very accomplished novelist as well.
Yeah, Joan worked so hard to try and figure out how to join the chat tonight. So, Joan, your hard work paid off. Okay. And the last one is Sharon Carlson Person. Is Sharon on tonight? Hey, Sharon, if you're on tonight, let me know. Otherwise, I will find you on Facebook. Sometimes people, they RSVP and then something comes up. So that
for an event, perhaps.
Perhaps. There's nothing happening right now.
Not really. My book launch was Wednesday of last week. It's like, oh, this really this worked out well for me. But it was actually one of my bookstores. There were 4 bookstores who co-hosted, and one of them was on Capitol Hill. And I was so glad to hear from them because they had locked up. They pulled the grates down, and they came to the book launch. And I was like, oh my God, you're okay. So that was sort of great. But what a mess.
That is amazing. They were probably so ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, everybody lift your glasses. We're going to get cheers to Julia.
Thank you.
We always cheers. She said she's going to turn her water into wine.
I've turned it into wine already. So.
Okay, here's to you. This was so much fun. Thank you for joining us early.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you. Your hair has gotten much longer since last year. Wonder why?
The pandemic will do that, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, everybody, please join us again. The date escapes me, but it's in May, and it's on the Facebook page, and of course I'll get obnoxious again as the date approaches about promoting it.
Okay. Great.
Fantastic. And hey, Julia, stay on after we log off and we'll chat.
We can chit chat, yes.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Where I'm at.
We didn't like it.
If you don't. We will. Okay.